Picture this. After years of delays, billions poured into development, and a national mission to challenge Boeing and Airbus, China's homegrown passenger jet, the C919, has finally taken off. It's meant to represent independence, proof that Beijing can hold its own in one of the most complex industries in the world. But now, reports suggest the United States may halt the export of the very engines that keep the C919 in the air. Without them, China's aviation dream could stall within just a few years. The stakes couldn't be higher. On one side, Washington holds the power to choke China's jet ambitions with a single export restriction. On the other, Beijing is determined to break free from Western control, while Moscow quietly signals it could step in. Could Russia really become China's backup plan, or is this just more geopolitical theater? Before diving into this high-stakes story of engines, sanctions, and power politics, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That way, you'll always catch the latest breakdowns on how global rivalries are reshaping technology and industry. Now, let's get into it. To understand why the engine issue is so critical, let's rewind and look at what the C919 actually is, and why it matters so much to China. For decades, the narrow-body passenger jet market has been controlled by two giants, Boeing in the United States and Airbus in Europe. Together, they account for more than 90% of global sales. These single-aisle aircraft, like the Boeing 737 and Airbus A320, are the workhorses of aviation, flying short and medium-haul routes and carrying millions of passengers every year. China, with its huge population and fast-growing middle class, became one of the biggest aviation markets almost overnight. By 2035, analysts expect China will need over 8,000 new planes, valued at more than $1 trillion. For Beijing, letting foreign companies dominate such a strategic sector wasn't an option. This wasn't just about business. It was about pride, independence, and reducing reliance on the West. That's why the C919 was born. Built by state-owned Comac, it was announced in 2008 as China's answer to Boeing and Airbus. The mission sounded straightforward: design a competitive, modern single-aisle jet that could serve China's massive market and eventually compete globally. But in practice, it was anything but simple. Building a commercial jet is a different challenge altogether. Every system, from avionics to landing gear, must meet the world's toughest safety standards. Certification takes years, and reliability must be proven across thousands of test hours. For a newcomer like Comac, the hurdles were enormous. Still, China pressed forward. The first prototype rolled out in 2015, and its maiden flight took place in 2017. Progress was slow, plagued by delays, testing setbacks, and sourcing problems. Deliveries, originally promised by 2021, slipped further. When the C919 finally entered service in 2023 with China Eastern Airlines, it was a symbolic breakthrough. Beijing hailed it as proof that China could stand alongside the aerospace giants. The first routes were domestic, connecting cities like Shanghai and Chengdu. Passengers described the jet as modern and comfortable, on par with Western rivals. By mid-2024, the plane had logged thousands of flight hours and carried over 100,000 passengers. Comac boasted a backlog of more than 1,000 orders, mostly from Chinese carriers. But here's the problem. The C919 isn't truly made in China. Its most crucial part, the engine, is sourced from the West. The jet depends on the LEAP-1C, an advanced turbofan developed by CFM International, a GE Safran joint venture. These engines also power Boeing's 737 MAX and Airbus's A320neo. No LEAP-1C means no C919. Comac can build the airframe, design interiors, and integrate systems, but without engines, the aircraft can't leave the ground. Every engine is subject to export approval, meaning the U.S. can block supply at any time. And it's not just the engines. Much of the C919's avionics, flight controls, and systems come from Western suppliers: Rockwell Collins, Honeywell, Parker Aerospace, Liebherr, and others. Analysts estimate that up to 60% of the jet's components are foreign-made. That makes the C919 extremely vulnerable. Rising U.S.-China tensions mean Washington could easily weaponize aviation exports. And Beijing knows this, which is why it's been pouring billions into developing homegrown alternatives. But designing a world-class turbofan engine is among the hardest engineering feats out there. Even Russia, with decades of aerospace know-how, still struggles to match Western efficiency and reliability. For now, The C919's reliance on GE and Safran is its Achilles heel. That's why the latest reports of a possible U.S. suspension of engine supplies have rattled China's aviation industry. If the flow is cut off, the program could grind to a halt. But why would Washington make such a move? To answer that, we need to zoom out to the bigger U.S.-China rivalry. On the surface, the C919 is just another plane. But in reality, it sits at the crossroads of global power competition. For Washington, controlling aerospace technology is a strategic advantage. American companies dominate supply chains, and export licenses give the U.S. tremendous leverage. And this isn't theoretical. It's been used before. Back in 2020, the U.S. briefly considered blocking GE from selling LEAP-1C engines to COMAC, citing fears it would erode America's edge. After lobbying by GE, the exports were allowed, but the warning was clear. Supply is never guaranteed. That uncertainty is back. And for Beijing, it's a reminder that its flagship aviation project rests on fragile ground. Washington effectively holds the keys to China's aerospace future. Beijing, of course, has its own leverage. Rare earth minerals, vital for everything from electronics to defense. China controls most of global processing and has shown before that it's willing to threaten restrictions when pushed. The result is a high-stakes standoff. The U.S. can restrict aviation technology, while China can squeeze critical resources. This tug-of-war makes the C919 more than just an aircraft. It's a symbol of national power. For Beijing, it's about proving it can compete with Boeing and Airbus. For Washington, it's about slowing a challenger's rise. That's why U.S. officials are wary of continuing engine sales indefinitely. Every delivery gives China valuable experience and accelerates its learning curve. Meanwhile, Beijing is racing to develop its own solution, the CJ1000A engine. But here's where Russia enters the picture. With Moscow cut off from Western markets, offering its PD-14 engines to China could, deepen ties and undercut U.S. influence. The question is, can Russian technology actually fill the gap? If Washington really cuts engine exports, COMAC would face disaster in the short term. Its production would stall, with airframes piling up unused. Industry experts say China's engine stockpile would run dry in 2 to 3 years. That would leave airlines with no choice but to keep relying on Boeing and Airbus. But sanctions are a double-edged sword. GE and Safran would, honestly, lose billions in business, while airlines all over the world would suffer from reduced competition. Fewer aircraft options ultimately mean higher costs for carriers and, for passengers too. And there's another risk here. Cutting off engines could actually accelerate China's push for independence. We've seen this before. Restrictions on semiconductors, telecom, and computing only fueled Beijing's drive to innovate. In the long run, Washington might, maybe inadvertently, push China to succeed even faster. Meanwhile, Russia's PD-14, though it's less efficient and not yet globally certified, could keep the C919 alive, at least domestically. And if China and Russia deepen their cooperation, the U.S. could end up facing a more united rival. That's the paradox, really. Short-term pain for China could turn into long-term strategic loss for Washington. So what are China's real options? Externally, Russia's PD-14 provides something of a lifeline. Internally, the CJ1000A represents a longer-term solution. But both paths are, honestly, filled with challenges. Adapting the Russian engine would require redesigns, new certifications, and, years of testing. And without international approval, C919S equipped with PD-14S would be restricted to friendly markets. The CJ1000A, meanwhile, is progressing, with prototypes in ground testing and possible flight tests in the coming years. But, certification, reliability, and global trust are steep mountains to climb. Western companies refined their engines over decades. China is trying to do it in just a fraction of that time. And yet, China's determination is undeniable. Just like with high-speed rail and electric vehicles, Beijing has shown it's willing to invest massively and play the long game. The C919, even if it's not fully independent yet, is already a step toward that future. The truth is this: Russia's PD-14 could keep things afloat in the short term. The CJ1000A could unlock independence in the long term. But for now, China remains exposed. This isn't a quick story of triumph or defeat. It's a long, grinding race. The U.S. holds the upper hand today, But China is playing for tomorrow. And that's why this aviation showdown is just so compelling. It's about more than who builds the better plane. It's about patience, strategy, and who controls the skies in decades to come. If you want to keep following this evolving battle, where politics, technology, and global power collide, don't forget to subscribe. This story is just beginning, and the next chapter will be even more dramatic. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown useful, consider subscribing for more. Until next time, stay inspired.